Tonight on the fastest Cover One Buffalo podcast in the history of our show, we will talk about all the moves that have happened here in the past week, the Taron Johnson accession, Casey Toohill, Mike Edwards, and more. But first, our guys, Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, I cheated this week. I watched you guys deal with snow from afar, and as my flight landed back tonight, the snow was gone, and I'd never had to experience
it. I honestly hate you so much. I was texting you all week. Here while we were dealing with that. This sucks. March is the dumbest. I know March Madness is going on and March Madness is cool. I'm not taking it away from that, but March is the absolute worst of the months because they tease you a little bit. We had the 70-degree days. I would gladly trade those 70-degree days back for this weather we got and get those here coming up later. It's terrible. We're supposed to here in Western New York. There's a possibility of another 5 inches tomorrow. I don't know if you guys are getting that in Ohio. It's miserable. And I've got 2 kids and it's hard to get them out of the house when it's like it's muddy outside and just like 30 degrees and snowing half the time and just windy and cold half the time. It couldn't be worse. If it's going to be this cold and this weather's going to be this bad, we could at least have the Buffalo Bills, and we don't even have that. So it just feels terrible, man.
Yeah. It was rough. I was out at a work conference. I was in San Diego, and it was what San Diego normally is. So it was lovely out there. It was 70 and sunny every day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just miserable to come back to muddy, nasty, gross stuff and everything going along with that. I was kind of hoping that maybe a couple more fun things would happen. The Buffalo Bills did add,
and the banana stand soon here.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. We definitely have not like extinguished every dollar, but we didn't have a lot to begin with. They added 2 players at positions that the team here at Cover One all did profiles on and projected. One specifically that I know you were clamoring for right from the beginning. So we had a decent run there, but I think we should start with the most impactful news of the past week, and that was the Taron Johnson extension. And, obviously I love Taron Johnson and have been very, excited about his play, but I don't know that anyone has championed the Taron Johnson fan club as much as you have, my friend. So, just tell people what it was like when you saw that news. We can't pretend there was a lot of surprise here. I think there was certainly some expectation, but to see that not only is he back, it's not a Band-Aid deal. This is an additional 3 years. And the coolest part for him, he's the highest paid nickel in the NFL and the highest paid nickel cornerback in NFL history. That is a really, really cool designation for him to earn after, he was an All-Pro. So this is certainly fully deserved. This is not some aspirational, goal contract that the Bills gave him here. He earned this money. Just tell the people what it was like to see a player that you've been championing like that be rewarded in the way he was.
Yeah, Taron's a super interesting one for me here. So when the Bills drafted him, this is going to happen to us again this year, but all the mock work, all the stuff I did, he did not pop up on my radar. And so when we drafted him, I started looking into him and looking at the mock draftables and looking at his measurements and stuff. And I remember going to Eric, I'm like, God, this guy's got short arms. He's from a small school. Like, what are we doing? What is going on here? What is this? And then I fell in love with him immediately in the style of play that
His
he had.
only highlight was getting pegged on the wrong side of the head
Yeah,
because he was looking the wrong way in the
yes,
gauntlet drill. Like, he's
and
the famous boink off the back of the head guy at the
that
combine.
and at the Senior Bowl, it was Josh Allen just throwing, like, dimes over him in one-on-one coverage and stuff like that, which whatever, like, that's tough. And so I was a little suspect, but then as we saw that style of play and the way he pulls that trigger and the way he's not scared to play and he plays bigger than his size, and I just fell in love with that. And I've been championing a long time that, really recently with your Kenny Moores, your Taron Johnsons, your, some of these players, Mike Hilton, like some of
Mike
these guys
Hilton
that are
is real.
playing in the slot have really revolutionized the game, right? And that more teams are playing nickel, you're able to combat some of what offenses have been doing for years. Where Greg, you and I, it's not that long ago, where slot was the third best corner, would just
Yeah.
be a slot, and that would just be the whoever was the third worst on the team or the third best on the team, however you want to
Or
put it.
whoever your smallest corner
Yeah,
just
smallest
put him
corners
in the
would be
slot.
there, and it's become a specialty position, and Terran's a big part of that in the NFL. But it also wasn't that long ago. Like, I'm glad you brought up me championing him, because it's easy to like Taron Johnson now, and he's a fan favorite, and it's easy to show like he's been really good and been a big part of this defense. But it wasn't that long ago where he was benched, and the play wasn't to the level that it is now. And his response to being benched and coming back and never even letting go of that seat and playing at an all-pro level, it really shows everything that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott want, which is draft and develop and turn these guys into all pro caliber players. And this is the feeling I have when we're talking about the safety position. Like, I trust in Beane and Babbage and this McDermott and this organization to get the most out of these players at positions in the defensive backfield. And Taron Johnson's probably the best example of what they've been able to do with somebody getting a later round draft pick, an undersized guy, and turning him into a guy that's really not only revolutionized their defense and making them a primarily nickel defense. And that's been talked about for years, of teams trying to get them out of it. But because he's so good, that they really won't get out of it in a lot of situations. And he's now become an all-pro level player, and they've rewarded him for that. So I love it for him. I love that guys like that have now made that a position in the all-pro. I think getting that type of recognition and what it takes to play. We talk a lot about boundary corners and stuff, and that is super hard to play on the boundary, but all the space that nickels play with, and then you talk about how offensive coordinators get some of their best receivers into the slot now and keep
Yes.
them off ball. You can't touch them. Then you also have run game responsibilities. You're passing off stuff to the linebackers, safeties, and corners around you. There's probably no position that has as much on their plate as slot nickel corner does. And so I'm glad it's getting the recognition that it deserves. And for him to be the highest paid of those guys, at least for right now, is just awesome for him. So I'm super happy for Taron there.
Yeah, it's something where you hear guys talk all the time. You don't have that sideline as your cushion, as your buddy out there. They can go either way when you're in the slot, and having that makes a huge world of difference. And it's really funny. There's some similarities in the Khalil Shakir kind of arc as there was, now seeing the early stages of Taron Johnson, where I was a huge fan of both guys as a rookie. And then some of the struggles that happened, I let myself kind of fall off and be like, God, we just benched him for some schmucks here that I just, can we worry about this? I mean, I had the whole thing where I was teasing about him being our third best linebacker, and that, well, at least he's good in run defense because he can't cover anybody. And, like a lot of that was tongue in cheek. Like, I was just kind of teasing half as much because you liked him so much, but
Appreciate that.
there was still something there to make fun of. And
Sure.
to see him not only bounce back from that benching and from those concerns, but to become, legitimately one of our best defensive players and an all pro caliber player. And now to be the highest paid nickel corner in NFL history, that's just a really, really cool moment to have. And I think it's awesome for him, and an awesome story for the Bills. A day 3 pick, developmental, like we just talked through, like had his lumps and earned it back. That is the kind of stuff that Sean McDermott, can't possibly have enough of in that locker room to tell that story, that a guy who was a day 3 pick, got benched early, worked his way back, worked his butt off to become the highest paid player at his position in NFL history. that you can't bottle that stuff for McDermott to be able to tell that story. So
Yeah, and I love that you did the Khalil Shakir comparison, because that was last year. I was pounding the table right early in the season for saying, like, I think Khalil Shakir really figured it out, and the blocking is where it showed up first. And I was like, if he keeps doing that and showing that willingness, you're not going to be able to keep him off the field with this team. And then he just continued to develop. And that's what I was saying all year last year. Like, I think he's my offensive Taron Johnson. Like, he's making that same type of progression. And so I love those two very much have a lot of similarities in how they're approaching the game. And I think Sean McDermott loves both of them just the same way.
So specifics of that deal, we're still in a weird window here. They actually haven't like submitted the paperwork to the NFLPA. So it was reported as a 3-year, $31 million deal. Obviously, people were like crediting me with projecting it right. It was not hard to do. It was not hard to do because
they said it already the week before, right?
I was joking tongue in cheek, but this is the way that it works. The moment that Kenny Moore got paid 3 years, $30 million as the highest paid nickel corner in NFL history, that is the framework. Like, that is the number. So immediately Brandon Beane's going to call him up and be like, hey, Taron,
we can do that.
We'd love to make you the highest paid nickel corner in NFL history. How about we give you $30.3 million? So the fact that it was 33 years and 31 million, that, of course, it's what it was going to be. That's exactly what it was going to be. There were smart people that were projecting he was going to get 12.5 million a year. So getting it for 10.1 million is a win for Brandon Beane, to be completely honest. Like, that's a win that it only costs us $10 million for the best nickel corner in the NFL. And it's one of those spots where I kind of think this is the same as tight end and right tackle, where tight end compared to wide receiver and right tackles compared to left tackles, everyone has kind of come around that, does it really matter that, Travis Kelce is the tight end in that offense, or that Sam Laporta was the tight end in that Detroit offense, or that, just so many times where Mark Andrews is the tight end in the Baltimore offense, but that they get paid like 60% of what the wide receivers get paid. And that, Lane Johnson is a right tackle, or Penei Sewell is a right tackle, but they get paid legitimately like 80% of what left tackles make. And for some reason, nickel corner is still in that range where it's ridiculous that like Xavier Howard is a $20 million corner, but Kenny Moore and Taron Johnson are $10 million corners. And that is like still lauded as the highest paid in NFL history. It's super weird. And I think it's a matter of time before nickel and tight end specifically, those two, right tackle is catching up. Right tackle used to be 60-70%. It's getting up to 80-90%. And I think Penei Sewell might be one of the guys that really takes it all the way up there. But I think that tight end and nickel corner are coming to be able to do that. And it's just weird that it shouldn't be like good for Taron, but it's really nice that the player that we have, the best player in the NFL, or one of, whatever you want to, he's the top 3 nickel corner in the NFL. It's really nice that it's also one of the most underpaid positions in the NFL.
It's crazy. Well, and the other thing that's crazy is, like, I feel like guys that excel at a high end on the boundary don't always do it, aren't able to do it for a long period of time necessarily. And so you end up paying them that money. And it seems like most of those guys fall off once you start to pay them that big check. But it almost is, as we ramp into draft season here, good GMs should probably prioritize hitting on those positions that are still not going to get top market. Because if you have a good right tackle, here's the thing I never understood about the right tackle, left tackle thing was, back in the day, it made more sense because your primary pass rusher would rush from the left side. But now they're moving these guys around, and most teams have too. Like, look at the gamut we ran last year, where it was like, okay, well, Deion Dawkins is dealing with this guy over here, but Spencer Brown has to deal with this guy over here. And so, like, the value shouldn't be what it actually is when you look at the cap numbers.
Yeah. So the final piece of it is, as I mentioned just a moment ago, they haven't submitted the paperwork, so we don't know exactly what the cap hit is going to be. The maximum benefit that we can get is 4.7 million in change in cap savings. I'm projecting that it's going to be closer to like 4 million because they probably gave him a little bit of new money. Now, there's a chance that they only guaranteed all 3 years and 30.3, not all of it, but they guaranteed the first and second year, and that there's a guaranteed option bonus next spring. And they basically agreed to what his signing bonus would be, and he'll get it next year. I expect that they also gave him a little bit of money early on, and that he got some of that new money now. And that's why, even if you do it with a couple void years and just gave him like 5 million of that money, I'm counting, or say 4 million of that money. That's like the 800,000 that I'm counting of why it's probably going to be 4 million in cap space, not the 4.78 million, because they probably gave him a little bit of new money on top of converting his existing salary into a bonus. So he's going to get a nice check today. It probably is going to be, I think his salary was set to be 6.45 million. So they'll knock that down to the 1.2 million minimum. He'll get that check for 5 million plus probably another 4 million ish. So he's probably going to get a check for like $10 million, $10 million. And then that'll set him up for this year and next year. And then they'll probably make it that next year's cap hit is pretty manageable too. And then he'll get the bigger chunk of the cap hits in 2026 and 2027, which honestly is still fully fine, because you're talking about Taron Johnson's age 28, 29, 30 seasons. Like those are years that are going to be perfectly fine from an athletic standpoint.
Yeah, he might be a safety by then. Who knows?
You never know. You never know. We've seen there was the transition Micah Hyde made. We'll see where that goes. So the couple other moves that happened this week, obviously we knew there were some different ones here. One that was not as exciting, but is probably more of maybe a Shaq Lawson upgrade, I think is probably the nicest way to
how
describe
I was going to put it. Yeah.
Is Casey Toohill signed from Washington. Again, if anybody wants examples, the guys here at Cover One, we are not, homers in the sense that we go out there and try to tell everybody that the Bills are going to sign, the Jaguars Josh Allen or Brian Burns or different stuff like that. We have a pretty good feel for the type. Eric does a lot of really good research. Some of our producers, guys like Chris Seth, Dave Tilton, help do a lot of statistical research on the archetypes of players, the type of players. I help rein things in from a contract standpoint to be like, yeah, that, Xavier McKinney was a good example where the guys were kind of excited about him. Like, no. He's going to get 15, 16, 17 million dollars. Don't even waste your time on him. And he did. He got 17.75. So like I help rein it in that direction. And then we go to work on the list. And Casey Toohill was a guy that just checked a lot of the boxes, was a absolute, I don't know if it was you or somebody floating around called him like just the new Trent Murphy. Like he's that hustle kind of guy that is getting effort sacks. He is a guy that isn't the biggest guy, but still does a decent job fitting and run fits in defense. No matter who you listen to, Eric Turner, Joe Marino, anybody you listen to raves about his effort and his motor and constantly chasing things down. Yeah. He's not some amazing, crazy, pass rusher that's going to come in and have a bajillion sacks, but he did have 5 sacks last year. That's a nice season. I think that he can rotate. I think he is a slight upgrade on Shaq Lawson. It probably getting the Shaq Lawson when he was 27, like that's the kind of player that we're getting here versus the Shaq Lawson we've seen the last year or two. And I think that Casey Toohill is probably sneaky fine as a 4th defensive end. He's the kind of guy you want as a hustle guy chasing opposite of Gregory Rousseau, who's collapsing the pocket or stepping in behind AJ Epinesa or Von Miller. Like he can soak up snaps. He can play a decent chunk of snaps. He had to, when Washington traded away both Chase Young and Montez Sweat, he got a chance to get in there. And that's where those 5 sacks came from, is he got the chance to play. He did a good job. We haven't seen his contract yet. I'm expecting it. I think you're going to see more this year. We'll do that $1.79 million thing a little bit, but Brandon Beane's very clearly trying to stay like in that 2.5 to 2.7 range because he knows it's going to be just under the comp pick formula. I expect that to be Toohill's contract details when it comes out. Is it's going to be 2.5 million with a chance that he could earn up to 4 if he hits sack incentives, that kind of thing. So I think this is a nice signing. It's not the most exciting thing that's ever happened. It's not something we should go raving about. He's going to be our 4th guy, but he probably is better than a Kingsley Jonathan or a Cameron Klein. He probably is better now than what Shaq Lawson now is. Shaq at his peak was probably as good or better, but this is a guy who's better now for what we need in that fourth defensive end spot.
And I think Brandon Beane, I don't know if he said it as much recently, but he often has talked about buying in on ascending players versus descending players. And I think the battle for that linebacker spot, if it was between Shaq and a guy like Toohill, you're dealing with an ascending player versus a descending player in Shaq Lawson. There's nothing against Shaq. Shaq's a really good run defender. I think that he's a reliable player. Like, I wouldn't have been mad if they brought Shaq back. But what gets me
fun
excited,
locker room guy.
Yeah, what gets me excited about Toohill here is you talked about, yes, he is a little bit undersized, but in terms of athleticism, he's much more athletic than Shaq is right now. When he came out of college, if you go look at his RAS card, the size isn't there, but he's elite in every other category, and it's in the top of the section in every other category. And I think that's what they're looking for in that position a little bit, is to get a little more elite. And then you add in the motor to that type of athleticism. And I think that's going to be something that Sean McDermott has a tough time keeping off the field. If he can show that type of motor and work, he's going to have a tough time keeping him off the field. And so this is a nice depth piece that's going to fill in. And I wasn't the one that said the Trent Murphy thing. I think our friend Bruce Nolan was the first that I saw. And I do see it, but again, more athletic. So he's got that same work ethic, that ability to get to keep that motor going, but he provides you that ability to maybe move a little bit faster, a little bit quicker, and provide you a little more of that.
So I will also bring up, he's not going to bring in the expectation of the contract Trent Murphy.
Correct.
Because I used to always joke that, why does everybody love the idea of, I think it was Eli Anka. Darn it. Who's the defensive end that had the name like that? It's going to make me crazy.
I don't know who you're talking about right now.
It was with an E. It was right around that same time as Trent
Obata?
Murphy. Yes, F.A. Obata. F.A. Obata. Everybody loved F.A. Obata, and everybody hated Trent Murphy, and they were the exact same player.
Yeah.
But everybody hated Trent Murphy because he was getting like $7, $8, $9 million a year, and F.A. Obata was like a minimum contract. I'm like, they're the same player. You're just mad because your expectations were here and here because of the contract. People are going to love Casey Toohill because he's going to be a $2 million player. Like, he's going to be super cheap, and he is going to have some cool hustle sacks. He is going to have like some fun chase down plays from behind because it's what he does. You want to know what? He's also going to get mauled by a right tackle every once in a while, and because he's 254 pounds, and that's what happens. Like, he's not some guy that we want playing 70% of snaps, but he's the kind of guy that when we want somebody to come in for his 30-35% of snaps, I want a guy with some elite athleticism who plays like his hair is on fire. That's what I want. That's the kind of guy that I want in that spot. And he's going to come in and be athletic with super high energy and scramble around to be able to do those things. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's a very nice value signing. We should not have high expectations. If I think somebody, it might have been Spin in here that said it in the chat. If he gets another 5-sack season, it's an incredibly successful. That's a huge. If we bought 5 sacks for $2 million and change, again, we haven't seen the contract yet, but I'm pretty confident that's what we're talking about here. That's a huge win, and that's a great contract. So that's the kind of thing we should be looking at. He should be contributing. I do think that we're seeing a bit more of some of the guys playing a higher snap count rate. We saw Ed Oliver get up there last year. Daquan Jones started playing more last year. Greg Rousseau started playing more last year. I think AJ Epinesa can have an uptick there.
I do too.
And I think Von Miller is getting back closer to what we saw towards the end of the year. So I think he's going to get back closer to his slightly higher snap count. So those different things are going to be there. I think that it's going to be a nice, cheap depth pickup that fans will like.
Yeah, and this is classic Bean of just like filling out those spots before you enter the draft, right? Like, and it doesn't have to be expensive, it doesn't have to be fancy, it just has to be an archetype that Sean McDermott's going to like, and that's exactly what he did here.
Exact same. So one that is much more slated as a starter is one that, credit to you. We've had a list of potential safety additions that we could make here. There were, this was one where we thought maybe we would splurge a little bit more. There were some guys brought in for visits. They did not reach, contract terms with some of those guys. I do think that they kicked the tires, or whatever you want to call it, kicked the tires on some of the maybe a bit more expensive players and just didn't reach the deals that they had. And one of the guys that we saw as a potential value signing who has had some starting opportunities, but been a rotational player that played a lot of snaps at his last 2 spots, has started in 2 Super Bowls that his team won, including last year with the Kansas City Chiefs, where he started for the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Mike Edwards, a guy that you were a fan of in the college scouting season that he was coming out in the draft and have been interested in a couple years in a row here as a free agent. So a guy that I was perfectly happy with. He wasn't my target that I had out there, but I did the workup on him and projected the contract. We've got him for 1 year, $2.8 million with some incentives.
Makes it even
Go
better.
up to 4. Very similar to the Taylor Rapp number where, hey, if a rookie beats you guys out, God bless you, that happens. But if you guys start and play a little bit more, you earn a little bit more money. Really, really nice spot. A guy who's not amazing, but has range, can come up and tackle, has, I think, 3 interceptions in the playoffs. So he makes plays on the ball as he's doing those things, is a guy that will be a nice raise the floor starter. Is not going to be a superstar, but is going to be a good player and can come in and do that. So tell the people why you were excited about him.
Yeah, so the year he was coming out in the draft, both Eric and I started falling in love with his style of play. He just screams a Sean McDermott style Bills defensive back. And I really wanted him in that draft because I was kind of looking ahead of, yeah, we got Poyer and Hyde, but what happens if one of them starts to get hurt, or what happens when we hit that age, or are we going to be able to maintain the both of them going forward? And we were able to do that a little bit longer than I projected that we would be able to. And so that was great. And I love those guys, but I thought he could come in, be a rookie, sit behind those guys, learn behind those guys, and get into the fold and become a starter eventually. And then when he hit free agency the last time, again, he was right there back on my list because I think he just fits exactly what the Bills defense wants out of a safety. And when we look back, we had that conversation again, I forget who it was with. I think Taylor DeGeorge maybe had been, and great listener, great follower. And it wasn't anything against him, but people were saying, you miss on a lot of these guys. And my thing has always been Sean McDermott has gotten more out of defensive backs than any position. When you look at undrafted free agent Levi Wallace, I know a lot of fans didn't like him, but he got him to become a starting cornerback 2 at one of the top pass defenses in the NFL. We just talked about what he did with Taron Johnson. We've talked about
Dane Jackson is the 7th. Christian
Dane
Benford
Jackson,
is the 6th.
yes.
Taron Johnson is the day 3 pick.
Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer are also great examples.
Jordan Poyer hadn't played until
nobody knew anything about him when he entered this team. And Micah Hyde
was really similar to Mike Edwards.
Correct.
Micah Hyde was a guy who wasn't a starter for Green Bay, but played a fair amount of snaps. People liked him, but he hadn't really gone out there and started all that much.
And so I do think I think you're right. I think he raises the floor of where they were at losing Poyer and Hyde. So I think that you have at least raised the floor of that starting position. But I think he hasn't played his best football yet. And this defense, I believe, is going to give him the opportunity to play his best football in college. And so far, he's a gamer. He just plays the game the right way. He's always around the football. He probably should have a lot more interceptions than he does. He's had his hands on a lot of balls. He can get in there and make plays.
11 interceptions and 3 more in the playoffs. 14 isn't nothing.
It's not nothing. And he there's more meat on the bone for him. He doesn't mind coming up and getting nasty in the run game. He can do exactly what the Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer thing, where he can come up and play in the box. He can play free safety. He's got some athleticism. He doesn't look as athletic as he actually is when you just watch him for a second, but he actually has good range, stuff like that. And the one thing I don't think people have done with him enough that showed up a lot in college is he's a much better blitzer than I think that he's been utilized as. And we saw both safeties have been used in this defense in that blitzing packages and getting them going after the quarterbacks. I think the Bills are going to use them in that sense. This is a real good one for me. This hits that Goldilocks free agent type guy for me. And that's why he's continued to be on my wish list. Is he's undervalued around the league, but I think that his tape and his body of work shows that he's a good value for the Bills and fits exactly what they want. I think he's going to buy right into what they're doing here. And I think fans are going to fall in love with his style of game. And what I don't want fans to do, he's wearing the number 21. We have a lot of emotional ties to the recent safety duo that was there. What I hope that he's not going to be Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer, especially not right away. And so I'm very excited about this player. I think he's going to be good. I don't want to get people too excited that he's going to come in and finally just make you forget all about those guys, but don't hold it against him that those guys were so good, because I do think we're still going to get good, fun safety play out of them. but the Bills are probably going to need to get a little more out of the defensive line to make this safety combo of a Rapp and a Mike Edwards look as good as maybe we have seen in the past.
Yeah, and I'm again, he wasn't my top choice because I think he's fine. I think this is a nice player. I think he is a starting caliber player. So I think some people were maybe a little bit too down on this and they, oh, he's a backup. Like he's played a lot of snaps everywhere he's been. He consistently gets on the field. If anything, that you talk about the blitzing, sometimes I think he gets a little too aggressive. You see him, he doesn't always have the best he has a high missed tackle rate each year, so that's something that will be a concern. Welcome to the club in Buffalo. We
I was gonna say
he's gonna fit right in our locker room missing tackles. That's certainly something we're used to.
If you can disrupt, that's going to be good enough for the Bills.
Correct. And that's, I think, if you're going to take solace in some of those numbers, is that he is around the ball all the time. And that is, we talked about the same thing with like a Terrell Bernard, in that it's something that it's hard to put a number on. It's hard to put a grade on. It's hard to put a statistical analysis to, and that's a tough spot to be in. So here I know, like Amori is asking, so do we have the money to go after a Justin Simmons or Julian Blackmon? The answer to that is yes, we do. We could. I don't expect that to happen. We now have Mike Edwards, Taylor Rapp, Cam Lewis, DeMar Hamlin, all under contract at safety, and I expect a draft pick at safety. So I don't expect them to sign a fifth veteran safety.
Yeah.
Now maybe if someone's still available and we end up somehow not taking one in the draft,
I can see maybe if like nobody bites on Simmons and he just wants to come in for nothing.
He wants to do a 1-year deal to come back. This is a great one. Anthony Perello here saying McDermott is to DBs what Mike Shanahan was to running backs. Yes. Honestly, yes. That and again, that doesn't mean superstars. That Olandis Gary had a nice season running there. Mike Anderson had a nice season. They weren't superstars, but they were good. They could produce. That's what the Bills defense does. That's what Sean McDermott and that defense does, is that we get good defensive back play even from modest investments at the position. When you see, again, undrafted free agent, 7th round pick, 6th round pick, 4th round pick are where those low end value free agent signings who turn into all pros, that is what we're talking about here. Is that I think the floor for Edwards is going to be good. I think there's going to be a good, solid starter. I don't know that there's a ton of upside that he's going to become some superstar, but I think he's going to play well. Obviously, nobody thought Jordan Poyer was going to become an all-pro. Nobody thought Micah Hyde was going to become what he became. Some people liked him and thought he was a good player, but I don't think anybody saw that end of it. So I'm not going to say never. Of course, Mike Edwards could turn into more. He hasn't had a chance to come in and be a solidified starter right from the beginning anywhere of where he's been. So there's a chance that could work out that way. Yeah. I think at a minimum, what this does, and you've now seen this across multiple positions, we signed both Curtis Samuel and Mac Hollins. We brought back Daquan Jones. We now brought back AJ Epinesa and signed Casey Toohill. We've now brought back Taylor Rapp and signed Mike Edwards. We have now plugged almost all of the holes where, of course, I do think defensive tackle is still one where we need another signing, where that hasn't quite happened yet, and that we need another signing to be able to get really what we need, and then also one more draft pick. But that's really the only one where it's obvious that we still need one. Of course, I still want a wide receiver in the draft. I still want maybe a corner, a nickel that can be Taron's backup. Like, there's still lots of places we want improvement, but we don't have the gaping hole that we had previously at some of these spots where, oh my God, if we don't come away with a day one starter at this position, we have a huge issue. And heck, even those last year, we all saw that at linebacker, and Terrell Bernard ended up being a revelation. So
yeah, here I sent you a tweet from Eric that Eric made. If you can pull that, I'm not technologically savvy enough to pull that up for the people to look at to just show. I mean, when Eric first made this graphic, I wish I had a before and after of going into free agency versus where we are at now. I don't know if we can make that bigger for the folks, but there we go. Just showing the look of the depth chart when we were going into free agency. This thing was full of red. right? You had no defensive tackles except for Ed Oliver. You had no safeties except for DeMar Hamlin going into this. And the way that he's been able to fill this in and get it ready for the draft is just such a classic Brandon Beane example of even up against the cap and this team kind of going into free agency, not sure that they were going to be able to fill. There was people saying like, we're going to need to use every single pick we have and hope to land starting caliber players. Now I'm rolling into the draft thinking like, all right, well, we'll probably talk about it here. We probably got to get another body at defensive tackle before we get in there. But I know everybody wants wide receiver or bust or whatever. We can't have to walk out of the wide receiver, but really the door's open for everything and for the board to fall your way. And that's exactly the spot that Brandon Beane and the front office want to be in right now.
Yeah, if the best player on the board is a defensive end, it's okay. If it's a defensive tackle, it's okay. Heck, if it's that Jackson Powers Johnson, like if it ends up being a guy that's, a guard center kind of guy, that could make sense. Of course, if it is a wide receiver, that's great. That's wonderful.
Totally.
I would love to have that. But it's now opened it up where we don't have to be this position or bust. We can have there. Of course, I want the first 4 draft picks to be, a wide receiver, a D tackle, a D end, a safety. Like I want them to be those positions.
But I don't need it at any one. But like
correct,
I don't need it to be a first round wide receiver. Yes.
Yeah, the order doesn't have to be married to that exact same spot. So again, I think if you're asking me, I think we still see some additional signings here. The interior defensive line is absolutely the spot where we still have a challenge.
Having guys.
We only have Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones. Like we still need there. We obviously saw.
You can't hate on Eli Anku like that, though, right? There's going to be some stands that come at you for that.
Somebody's going to come yell at me.
Yeah.
Austin Johnson was in. We did Sebastian Joseph Day. I really, I haven't seen what Tennessee ended up giving him, so I don't know what money we had. He probably, again, I think they're offering everybody that, hey, here's $2.5 million and some incentives where you could earn more. I'm looking right now. We haven't seen his contract updated yet for what Tennessee gave him, but Austin Johnson makes a ton of sense. You saw Daquan Jones talking to Austin Johnson. He is a good, solid backup one tech, like a improvement over Eli Ankow. I still think then that would let us draft Ed Oliver's backup in the draft to be the rotational 3 tech. That's nice because then you get a rookie contract mixed in there. The same thing if one of these veteran free agents pass rushers that stay out there late into the summer every year, if that happens to come out again, okay, that's fine. I'll bring in a veteran pass rusher guy later on if we don't find one in the draft and we want somebody else there. But right now we have 4 guys and we have Kingsley Jonathan as a 5th guy. Like that's reasonable.
Yep.
Everybody wants an outside receiver. I want that too. But right now, that graphic we showed, if you're trotting out a week 1 offense where it's Josh Allen with James Cook, Dalton Kincaid, Stephon Diggs, Khalil Shakir, and Curtis Samuel, that's a modern NFL offense. That's a good offense. We're already in good shape. And hopefully we have a dynamic, explosive outside receiver that's there pushing for snaps in that spot.
Hopefully a couple. I think you can get a walk away with the amount of picks you have. You can get a couple of those guys here in the draft. So
it just opened up everything that's there. So if we go and sign one of the running backs that's still available, that's fine. I won't be upset with that, but we could probably draft one. If we go sign another linebacker, we could probably have another guy fight for linebacker, but we could probably draft one. If we sign one of the backup nickel guys that's floating out there, I know Eric was kind of standing for Tavier Thomas. Like, yeah, sure, that'd be great. Or we could draft one. Like they're in a lot of spots now where besides defensive tackle, I don't know that we have to go out there for anyone. And if anything is a spot, maybe interior offensive line. Honestly, if there's a guard still floating out there, maybe that's what I'm going to look at is what guards are still available in free agency. Do we have a guy that is still out there that we could add? But that's
one I'd love to attack in the draft and get some youth in there and develop. Yeah. And I think you got enough to get through a year, but develop some youth in there along the way. I want to self-correct. It's Eli Anku. I said Eli.
Anku.
Yeah,
Eli
I don't want his stands coming at me for that one. So I apologize for that. One thing I would love to see is I would love Austin Johnson to just sign. I know he was on a visit, and maybe that's still. I don't know if he went on to visit anywhere else today, but
I won't lie. On my longer flight today, I didn't buy the internet, and I told myself I was watching like a show I downloaded. I'm like, I'm gonna land, I'm gonna turn my phone on, and I'm gonna see that Austin Johnson signed, and we'll have that for the show tonight.
I know. Well, yesterday I tweeted out it was a great day to sign either Blackmon or Edwards, and then Edwards signed, and I was like, well, I'll try this again, and I did. It's a great day to sign Johnson. It didn't happen, so I'm going to stop doing that. But one I would really love, and I know Eric has told me to pump my own brakes on this. It's not happening, but Tier Tart has been, since the start of free agency, was one that I think it's a good fit. I think it's exactly what we need for that spot. But I thought he would get a little bit on the higher end of the defensive tackle market, but it's that we talk about that game of musical chairs all the time. I know he wants to be a starter. Eric's talked about him. He wants to go somewhere to start. He is not going to have that opportunity here to be a starter, but he's going to have the opportunity to be on a team that's going to go deep into the playoffs and make a run.
Those two guys, with Daquan and Tier Tart only having to play 50% of snaps each, oh my God, that'd be so nice.
Every day that goes by, that dream grows a little inside me, because there's a game of musical chairs that he's missing out on. At some point, he's going to have to make a decision of, maybe I take a little less for 1 year and go on a team that's got to run, and maybe I don't have to play as much because Daquan's there, and I can just play really good and less snaps and really earn my value back up on a team that's going to be on prime time and that's going to be in playoff games. And I don't know, every day that goes by, that's get a little bit more true for me. So hopefully he signs somewhere else so I can just get over it. But that would be my dream right now, is to get him in.
Of the guys that are there, Tier Tart would be, there's kind of like it's not a Justin Simmons level, but it's probably more like I wanted Quandre Diggs was the one that I wanted out of that safety group. And it's like, well, we probably won't be able to get him, but hey, he's already kind of lost the musical chairs. Maybe we can still get him at that level. One other name to throw out there is Raheem Nunez-Roches, is a guy that I did some research on before as well. He is another one of those guys who can be the big, stout, one-tech backup guy. And if we don't hit on Austin Johnson, he's a guy I could see as a fallback option that would still be worthwhile. So we'll see where it goes. But like every year, Brandon Beane comes in, gets some value signings, is able to get some things cleaned up, and puts us into a decent spot. I actually think the Bills are in pretty good shape right now, honestly. So most of the websites are going to show you that there's $7.4 million in cap space. There's a couple moving parts there, because on the positive side, Taron Johnson is not included. So let's assume that's $4 million, and even $4 million in change. Let's do that. It's the maybe 4.3 or 4.4 or whatever it is. That would put us at $12 million in cap space. I think that each of the Mike Edwards and Casey Toohill deals are probably $2 million in change. So that's going to count about $1.5 million each above the minimum contracts that are already there. So that's $3 million of that. That brings us back down already to say $9 million. Ty Johnson's probably real close to the minimum, so but maybe it's a little bit of money above. So we're probably at like $8.5 million in cap space with the moves we know of right now. That doesn't include anything for Trey White. That doesn't include in that Oliver restructure, which we could still do. That doesn't include a Matt Milano restructure that we could still do. Those are dollars that are sitting out there and available to us. So Brandon Beane really could spend all of that money. I did an explainer today on Twitter about we don't really need that much money for the draft class, because right now with those three contracts we're talking about, Mike Edwards, Ty Johnson, and Casey Toohill, our cheapest, our 51st contract is $985,000. That's already as much as every.
And we get that Trey White money.
Without the Trey White money, we only need $1.8 million in cap space, because our first round pick counts as $2.4 million. So that's like 1.4 above the minimum. And our second round pick is like 1.3 million. So that's like 200,000 above. So those two together, it's like 1.6, 1.8 million that we need. Easy. Everybody else, you're just swapping out another minimum guy who's already there that was already counting for us. So all those different things, we could spend another $6-7 million in cap space and then get Trey White's money, which is all we need for during the season. So I don't expect some other big move, but they have enough money to play around for a couple more, a $2.5, $3 million defensive tackle, another $1.5 or $2 million running back, another $2 million guard,
Yep.
maybe another linebacker to compete. Like we can play around as a backup
Ezekiel
corner.
Elliott or something.
Yeah. There's different players like that floating around. One guy that I like, Dante Foreman, signed with the Browns. He was a guy that I would have gone after.
Yeah. The other thing we don't know,
there's
Greg,
money to play with.
People get so panicked, like especially even that first wave of free agency when not everyone's signed and the team's not done and all that stuff. But then there's still panic now of, well, now the games of musical chairs are running up, and you go look on these lists of free agents that are available and it's getting thin. You still have so many opportunities to add talent to this roster. You get the whole draft where you have a ton of picks this year. You have the undrafted free agency where they've done pretty good at undrafted free agency, even though it's getting harder for those guys to get on the Bills roster. But then you have this wave that's going to come here this summer of all the teams that have added and are going to continue to add young talent. You're going to get guys that get cut that are quality starters, that are guys that are going to be chasing rings and stuff like that. And so to have some of that leeway in money available in cap when we thought we were going to be up against it before this point is a huge plus for Brandon Beane to know that, hey, we don't even know the stockpile of people that are also going to be coming onto the market here over the spring and summer as they get released from teams because their jobs are getting taken by rookies, whether they're teams that aren't super competitive and looking to get their rosters in shape or whatever it is. There's going to be a whole nother influx of talent, and you got to be able to have some money available so that you can pounce on those moves when they come up. And that's where the Bills are at now.
Yeah. So a couple of the guys on Facebook here, John and Sean, were talking about Reggie Gilliam. So I'll give you, although obviously no one at his tier of contract is guaranteed, like a Quentin Morris is a guy that, like, sure, you could upgrade it, but those two guys, people need to remember, we just lost Saran Neal and Tyler Medikevich and Terrell Dodson and
tons of special team snaps.
A lot of guys who played a lot of special team snaps. Two of the guys that played the most special team snaps who are back on the team are Quentin Morris and Reggie Gilliam. And those are guys that's a good third tight end. That's a good fullback and fourth tight end. And they play special teams. So that's a guy that you're never going to be upset is game day active, because he can fill all those roles. He can play on punt return and punt block and kick return and kickoff and
it's a utility
and play in short yardage and play as a fullback and a tight end. So all of those things, those are guys that just there's no value in replacing them. And I don't want them to go spend more money at fullback. We don't use a fullback often enough that in the 10 or 15 snaps we need him to play on offense, he's a perfectly good fullback. We don't need somebody to do more than that. He is that H-back, move tight end, fullback, special teams guy. That's what we want those guys to be. Those are good, cheap filler positions that we need there to be able to fill in those spots. So those are guys that there's not a lot of value in upgrading. If we sign another linebacker who beats out Nicholas Morrow for that roster spot, God bless him. That's fine.
Cool.
If Justin Shorter beats out Mac Hollins for that roster spot, God bless him. That's great. That's fine. Nobody cares. That's not going to hurt anything. So that's fine if we bring in someone to compete and push those guys, but it's not something that's a priority for me, and it's not something I want to spend money on doing.
Not at all. Yep.
Yeah. All right. So
out of here.
And this is my official pivot. After the first 2 weeks of free agency, I have held off. I have not done a single mock draft. I am going to do one maybe this weekend. I might even do a special one on the YouTubes to have people watch me do my first mock draft.
Is that on the Greg Tompsett Sports Show?
It might be.
It might be. Plug the screen.
We might do that. I think Sunday afternoon, 3:00. Right now is our target. We're going to try to do a Greg Tompsett Sports Show. My first mock draft of the offseason. Going to mess around and play around with that. We have had a really good time. And another thing, we've mentioned we're doing a giveaway for our One Pass signups. Anybody who signs up, we're giving away a PlayStation 5. We're giving away a Josh Allen jersey. We're giving away a Bills neon sign. All kinds of cool stuff. And the best part is people have actually taken us up on it. We've had a really cool run of signups of new One Pass members. The Slack channel has been awesome, and tons of new people in there. A couple really smart new ladies joining the chat there.
Yep.
They have jumped in and been a really cool addition to the discussion there, which I love to see, bringing in some new ideas into the chat. And if you want to know a little bit more about that, listen to these guys here. Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
All right. Any final thoughts for the people?
If you are into mock drafts, we have a mock draft channel in the Slack channel as well, and that's always
you
fun.
can come share your mock drafts, your latest
talk about them. There's a lot of fun channels. We've today we got lately the golf channel has been going up. There's general channels, there's television show channels. So it's not it's
Sabres channel,
yes,
draft
Sabres
prospects.
Channels. So there's always something going on, and there's other interests and stuff. So it really has developed into its own community of Bills fans, and it's like-minded people. So you don't get the people on Twitter that are just in there to tell you you're an idiot or whatever name they want to throw out at you. It's a respectful area where we try to have respectful conversation. So that's good. But my other last thought is happy birthday, Sean McDermott.
Hey,
happy birthday, coach. I know that he's probably the most polarizing coach of my lifetime, but he's also the winningest coach in terms of winning percentage in the Buffalo Bills history. And so shout out to Sean McDermott, and thank you for these last years have been damn fun. And thank you for that, Sean McDermott.
Yeah, it's fun to have winning football to care about. That is a fun new experience. I have not been used to that for most of my adult life, so it hasn't got quite where we need it to yet. But it's still been damn good and been a lot of entertainment for our football lives. So thank you to everybody in the chat. You guys have been awesome. Thank you to our awesome producer, Chris Kepner, all the guys over at Cover One, everybody in the Slack channel. We appreciate you guys. Anyone else who's considering it, I can't recommend it enough. When you sign up, this takes you all the way through all the draft, all the season, all the way through next year. You're good for a calendar year. It takes you all the way along there. Give it if you're considering a way to be able to learn more about it, or you just want to find out ways to help us out and to be able to support all the research that we do. That's where that money goes. It buys us the access to research all the things that we do to put this work together for you. So it's something that we take a lot of pride in, and couldn't be more thankful for everybody who's been jumping in to help us out. So on behalf of Chris Kepner and Aaron Quinn, I'm Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.